What were humans doing 6,000 years ago? To answer this question, we must travel back through time. 6,000 years ago, around 4000 BC. This was the period when the most crucial turning point for our humanity began. Remarkably, around this time, similar phenomena began to occur simultaneously across the globe. People began to settle down. They finally began building homes, planting seeds, and planning for tomorrow. Today, we will turn the first page of that journey.
The first stage is Mesopotamia, the land of present-day Iraq. If you had witnessed this moment firsthand, you too would have been breathless at the sight. The soil between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers truly glowed like gold when hit by sunlight. People woke up early in the morning. This was exactly what was different from previous eras. They were no longer hunting creatures. They were the first humans who learned to plant seeds in the ground and wait for them to grow. But here lay the problem. The river's water didn't come when needed, but the fields needed water. So someone drew a line on the ground with a stick. What if we divert water from here to there? This was humanity's first irrigation system. It may seem simple, but this single idea changed humanity's destiny. The clay tablets discovered in Mesopotamia today begin with these words: "I am a farmer. I cultivate the land." This was the moment when humanity began to define itself through occupation for the first time. But here's what was astonishing. While farming, people realized the limits of doing it alone. I can't water all these fields alone, but if we work together, you divert water, I'll plant seeds, and he can handle the harvest. Small villages grew larger like this. Now they seemed more like cities than villages. The Sumerians created city-states for the first time: Uruk, Kish. These names might sound familiar. The concept of citizen was born here. I belong to this city. This thought was humanity's first collective identity. And now, counting became necessary. How many barley seeds were planted? How many stalks grew? How could one prove if someone tried to take their harvested wheat? So, someone began marking on clay with pointed sticks. This was cuneiform, the beginning of the world's oldest writing. Now we can record thoughts, transmit them, preserve them. At this moment, humanity began to escape the grave of time. Now, let's turn our gaze 3,000 kilometers away. The Nile operated under completely different rules. Imagine the Nile floodplains. Land that had been like rock until a month ago suddenly floods. This water, called black water, brought endless nutrients downstream. For the Egyptians, agriculture was not a choice, but survival itself. As the Nile receded, people slowly followed the river like gods. Soul, sow seeds in this land of prosperity. These words would later be carved on pyramid walls 4,000 years later, but at this time, priests were only speaking them aloud. A strange thing began to happen. One person said, "I am king," and people believed it. Because he managed water, set boundaries for cultivated lands, and resolved disputes. This person was King Menes. Around 3100 BC, Upper and Lower Egypt were unified. This simple event was the seed that would later open the famous Pyramid Age. But what about islands far from rivers? Crete was still surrounded by endless blue seas. The islanders were frustrated. Our land is too rocky to cultivate, but there must be grain on the continent over there. Then let's cross the sea. Someone must have shouted this. The Minoans were among humanity's most courageous adventurers. They built wooden rafts, read the wind, and followed the stars. What they did while traversing the Aegean Sea in all directions was simple. We know how to make pottery, you give us grain. This was the birth of maritime trade. So when you look at the pottery found in Crete today, Egyptian-style patterns are mixed with Minoan styles, and Mesopotamian geometric patterns are reinterpreted in Cretan fashion. The world was beginning to blend together.
Now let's turn east, to the edge of the Earth. The Korean Peninsula's summer was long and humid. People gathered by the riverside and reached down to gather shellfish. Neolithic Korea is very specific. If you're searching, find the coastal shell middens. There you can find comb pattern pottery. Patterns are carved on these pottery pieces. Wave patterns, wind patterns, arrow-like shapes chasing something. People invested much time making this pottery, because this was not just a simple tool, but hope for the future. We pour water into this vessel, store it, put seeds in for storage. We prepare for tomorrow. This was the meaning of comb pattern pottery. It was the beginning of planning. And when you go around the shell midden, you can see flames. In the evening, the entire village must have blinked like a single crimson eye. In that firelight, the affairs of the next day were discussed. Where should we go fishing tomorrow? Which field should we cultivate this weekend? Humanity was no longer just living day by day. We had become beings who planned for tomorrow.
Here we discover something truly remarkable. Around 4000 BC, when irrigation agriculture began in Mesopotamia, the Egyptians were also engaging in Nile-based agriculture. Crete was beginning maritime trade, and the Korean Peninsula was gradually settling into farming. In terms of distance, from the Euphrates to the Nile is 3,000 kilometers. From the Nile to Crete is 1,500 kilometers, and from Crete to the Korean Peninsula is over 10,000 kilometers. At that time, these were places that would take months or years to travel to, the far ends of the Earth. What does it mean that similar changes occurred everywhere? Was it simply coincidence, or was it an era when humanity as a species was filling some receptacle? Archaeologists say, this is the birth of civilization. And they say that this birth, striking the entire globe simultaneously, is what historians find bewildering.
6,000 years ago, around 4000 BC. This figure is not just a simple date. It means that everything in the world we live in today began at this time. Cities started here. Writing began here. The concept of law sprouted here. The moment you're watching this video, the chair you're sitting on, the clothes you're wearing, the meal you're eating. The roots of all this trace back to 4000 BC. Humanity was no longer just adapting to nature. We had become beings who utilized, transformed, constructed, and created anew. But simultaneously, we also accepted certain risks. Belonging to groups, sharing knowledge, and accepting the possibility of it all being destroyed. 6,000 years later, we still face the same questions. How can we live better? How can we live more justly? How can we live together? 4000 BC was the beginning. It was the beginning of cities, the beginning of writing, the beginning of law, the source of everything we now call humanity. So the next time you pick up a grain of rice, walk through the bustling city streets, or read letters, remember, this is a gift handed down by the wise people of 4000 BC. We are descendants of Mesopotamian farmers. We are heirs of Nile shepherds. We are successors of Minoan sailors. We are children of Korean Peninsula Neolithic people. We are all the descendants of those who dreamed in 4000 BC. In the next video, we'll explore how these civilizations developed to create the ancient world you know today. Please subscribe and like, and let us know in the comments which ancient civilization you'd like to see covered next. Thank you for watching.